Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Crossy's Corner. This is a great Monday evening. We've got fantastic guests, Rebecca Scown from New Zealand, joining us on Crossy's Corner. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you on Crossy's Corner, and we're going to get into lots of things about your career and current situation in rowing at the moment. But first of all, just a brief word about the Rowers Conference, which, as most of you watching will know, is sponsored by Ludum, who help out on Crossy's Corner. So the Rowers Conference is happening this year. In the past, it's featured some great guests, people like Jurgen Grobler, Mike Spracklin, Paul Thompson, Bobby Thatcher, Catherine Granger, those kind of names. And a long list of experts as well from the world of rowing and other sports, and they are being drawn together this year on January the 23rd at Dorney Lake. So it's still planned to go ahead. It was virtual last year, but the plan is that the conference will go ahead this year. Some of the speakers confirmed include Mehdi Cordy, PhD, coach and scientist at the Royal Dutch Cycling Federation. There's a lot of crossover between different sports, which is what makes the conference so good. Grace Prendergast, fellow Kiwi and former crewmate, I think, of yours, Rebecca.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dr. Kath Bishop, author of that fantastic book, The Long Win. If you can't make it, we are going to stream the keynote talks live, giving viewers the chance to ask questions and so on and so forth. And listeners to Crossy's Corner get 20% off the price if they check in at rowersconference.com and use the code Crossy20, apparently. And that'll appear on the screen below us as we go. So, Rebecca, it's great to have you on. So how long since you last touched an oar?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. Probably a good 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 years, something like that. It's been a while.
That's a long time. How come you've managed to stay away from because you live in Putney? We were just talking about that before you went on. How come you've managed to stay away from rowing for so long?
I mean, gosh, I don't know. I haven't purposely done it. However, it's just in terms of it being something to just dip in and out of, I think it's not that easy all the time. I've had a couple of opportunities. I would say it hasn't always worked out because I of one thing or another. You know, living in London, it's quite busy and working and all sorts of things. So yeah, not ventured back, but maybe one day in the near future.
Yeah. So I want to take you back to 2017, which was your the last year you rowed internationally in the World Championships in Sarasota. Why or what sort of circumstances did you know that was going to be your last championships at the time, and what sort of circumstances were around your decision to retire?
Yeah, so I definitely knew. I knew that whole entire year.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I finished the Olympics, and I did think that was going to be it. I took a few months off, and I couldn't quite decide where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, and that sort of thing. So I thought if I just continued for a bit longer, and it was the Sarasota World Champs, and I thought they looked quite cool and a good year. So I kind of just, and I didn't want to make a decision about my future under the hype of the Olympics. So it gave me an extra year just to settle down and kind of reassess really where I wanted to be. But I really loved that I did that year. And whilst nobody knew I was not continuing, I think that sort of helped, I think, too, because I mean, everyone knew and thought that I was completely buying into it, which I thought was important for the team. But for me, it was such a cool year to have to take a bit of pressure off myself, not looking at the next Olympics, but to be able to give back to the team coming through as well, and just add a bit of experience to continue into that next Olympic cycle. So it was a really nice way to finish that I felt like I got to give back my team, and it wasn't about me and my results as such, at my personal kind of gain. It was to help everyone else out, and I loved it. It was such a good year to finish like that.
That's really interesting. I wonder why more oarsmen and oarswomen don't follow the same path as you and just have that year with a with pressure off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I don't know if it was something that really occurred to me until I was sort of in it and amongst it, of how great it actually was. I think it's just such a cutthroat sport all the time too, that and you give up a lot, so you're sacrificing many things. So in order to warrant the sacrifice, I guess you kind of feel like you need to be committed to the pinnacle event, which is the Olympics. But yeah, I've always sort of said this since to many athletes as well, that actually I would recommend that as a way to end your career, and you can sort of end it on your own terms in a nice way. But in saying that too, I think it's important not necessarily for people to know that either, because you still have to feel as though you're all fully committed, and you don't want selectors to kind of think of it in the wrong way too, because you want to be challenged as well. And
How did you keep it? How did you keep it to yourself? Was that a challenge for you?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm pretty good at keeping secrets to myself, but no, it was fine. I think I sort of I had told the high performance manager and the CEO, so they were aware. So I didn't feel like I needed to tell anybody else in that situation. And yeah, I just wanted everyone to sort of view me as just an athlete going for it, like they all were too. So yeah, it wasn't a problem.
And you were really going for it in that 8. The 8 was sort of say built around you, but you were sat in the 6th seat of that 8. Which,
yeah. No, I had that was quite a cool in terms of sitting in a seat that I probably would never have been considered for in other years. But that was a really cool boat that we had put together, and that race itself was such a cool race to end on, because I've never been in a race like that before, that we had 6 boats from start to finish, basically all going down in one line, and it felt as though you couldn't take a breath or just move slightly out of the wrong way, because someone else would overtake you. So it went really fast, but it was such an exciting race to be amongst. So yeah, I thought that was a very cool way to kind of end it for me. I'll always remember that one, actually.
Oh, that's marvelous. And just give us a little sketch of your career since you stopped rowing in 2017.
So I finished in 2017. I took a bit of time to travel. I came over to London and based myself here, and we've had a travel sort of holiday type thing, but also to make lots of connections, because I decided that I wanted to be over in the UK, in London, living and working. And what was another really great thing about the whole rowing world and doing this sport is that we've got such a cool community that was great to tap into here in London, and that helped me secure the job that I now have through Tony Mallon, who I met, who has been a rower himself, and has a charity which I now run. So I was connected through various rowers to Tony, and that led me to ultimately come and live over here in June 2019.
Wow. And so let's talk a little bit, before we go back to rowing, let's talk a little bit about this charity and what it does, and how come you've found such a good fit for working there with yourself.
So it's a really fantastic charity. It's called Youth Experience in Sport, or YES, which I've had to get good at saying yes over here, because when I first arrived I would say yes and nobody knew what I was talking about, so I've learned how to say yes like an British person. And so it's a grant giving charity, so we support sports clubs and youth centres and sports charities predominantly in East London, who are doing some fantastic work, and so we back them by finding funding from the private sector to put into these sports clubs and things. And yeah, so that's sort of the crux of the charity. So we're out there, trying to support people and help young people who would have otherwise gone down a potentially negative pathway, find a better one through sport, which we all know is such an incredible way to teach young people life lessons and give them support networks and all sorts of amazing things. So it's fantastic that I can be involved in this, which is something I I've experienced myself the great things what sport can do for you, and now to be able to enable young people to have the opportunities that I have had it's pretty great sort of full circle type of role that I get to be in.
And you must have come across some great stories. I mean, what about some of the stories and some of the sports that you're involved in?
So we've there's loads. There's recently actually one of the Fight for Peace is a boxing and martial arts academy, which is based in North Woolwich, and one of the guys that I deal with there, he actually came through Fight for Peace himself. He had parents that got sent back to, I think they were from a Caribbean island, got exported out. He was 16, his sister was 18. They stayed in the UK. They had to support themselves, go to school, all the rest of it. And he said in his area where he was, there was a lot of people who, the whole drugs sort of scene to make money easily to try and support himself to do what he was doing. So he stumbled across Fight for Peace through a friend that was going there. He ended up going there any hours of the day that he wasn't at school. He started to do some work there. He got paid £20, which he would give to his sister so she could go to the classes and get exercise there and that sort of thing. But now he's really incredible person. We've actually got him out in a rowing boat since. But just such a great testament to someone's life that could have gone so wrong, and from no fault of their own, just not having the opportunity or advantage at an early age. But he's been able to really make a great think of himself, and so it's nice to do more of that and help more of that become possible.
Yeah, and I know it's not just martial arts and boxing. I know that you do soccer as well, and water sports too. Rowing is another area that you're involved in.
Yes, correct. So we do any sport that is there that's run by great people, helping kids that need it. So lots of options, lots of cool stuff going on, which is exciting to see.
Oh wow, that's so brilliant, and I guess that's a great job by the sounds of you talking about it. It sounds like you really enjoyed doing it, and you get a lot out of it.
Yeah, no, I really do, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be able to do it too. So it's a great job, and I'm very lucky, and
Fantastic. So I want to take you to your rowing career now, and basically, I was looking through your pairs partners because you've been in a pair for quite a while. We'll get into some of your races quite soon, but you've had many different pairs partners. I think I counted up 5 on the one hand, but maybe you've had even more than that.
Yeah, I think internationally, gosh, I think it must be about 5. Yeah, I think it was.
So I've got Genevieve Berrant in 2016, Louise Trappett in 2014, Kayla Pratt, Juliet Haig, and Emma Jane Feathery.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So how come you had so many different pairs partners, and you were the one constant in the New Zealand pair throughout that period? How come that was the case?
I worked really hard and just wanted to keep my seat and stay there. And I guess I cycled through various pair partners, but depending on who the competition was coming through bow side, and combinations that I clicked better with, I suppose, happened probably around the Olympic cycles. But I finished 2008, having been part of the women's 8 that didn't qualify for Beijing. And so I decided at the end of that, and I hadn't had a real result from rowing. I was fairly young, obviously, at that stage. And I decided that if rowing was going to be something that I would stick at, I needed to give it a really good go, but I wanted complete control over that as well. So I decided the small boat was the way to go. So that after the Olympics, I stayed in Cambridge and trained by myself all winter and worked really hard so that I would come back fitter than everybody else, and that essentially got me straight into the pair straight away. And then I went to the World Champs that year and won bronze, and that was sort of got me sort of hooked and working hard and trying to make sure that I retain that seat throughout. Juliet came back from having a year over in London after the Beijing Olympics, and came back, and we had a really tough season. There were 4 of us that were going for the pair. Really, really hard season, but it set me up, I think, for the rest of my sort of rowing career too that summer. And then she got the seat back in the pair with me, and we were a really great combination, worked so well together on and off the water. And
so I want to take you back to that decision that you made, part of the New Zealand day, and you must have felt that you didn't quite have control over the project. You knew you wanted to carry on rowing. I mean, what is it about you that drove you towards that outcome?
Yeah, I think, I'm not someone that gets very vocal about it, but I think I'm pretty good at just putting my head down and working hard. And when I decide on a goal, I kind of get everything right to make it happen. And I don't know. I think it was just something that I had within me. And I feel like I'm pretty tough mentally, and I can take anything anyone gives me. So I was prepared for every single challenge. And I think often, even if I didn't get it at that younger age, I went and found it for myself. So if I didn't think that I was training hard enough, I would go and do a little bit extra somewhere else. And whilst maybe that's at a later age, I probably would have not done that because I would have already had all that money in the bank of training. But I think that just made me feel as though I did everything I possibly could, and that was sort of the mentality that I went in with my whole time throughout my career.
So were you in a single scull then by yourself that winter of 2008, 2009?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't really on the water much. It was a lot of erging, a lot of cycling, running, weights, and that sort of thing. I didn't have anyone to give me a program at that stage. Everybody had sort of disbanded at that point. Yeah, so it was just my own training.
How did you make it up, or how did you decide what you were going to do?
I don't know. I just varied it. I think I would go from an erg to a run to a cycle to weights, and then just as much as I could. I had previous training programs that I'd done through my under 23s and through to 2008 season, so I had an idea of what a training load was like, and I just tried to recreate it. I also I was very lucky too in the fact that I had my cousin Sonia Waddell, who was Sonia Scown when she was rowing, that was in Cambridge as well, that I could often ask for advice when I was coming through my career. So I could bounce lots of ideas off her about training and different things as well. So I did seek information from various people, but I wasn't given a Row New Zealand training program as such to kind of work off.
That's amazing. So, did you give yourself some really, really tough sessions, or were you kind on yourself? I mean, what sort of program did you set yourself?
I mean, gosh, this is a long time to look back, but I think the toughness actually was the fact that it was winter. I was by myself. I didn't know what the outcome of this would be, and it was sort of just kind of blindly going for it. I think the training sessions probably would have been an hour and a half type things. I'd run, do sort of 12 to 15k runs, be on the erg for an hour to an hour and a half. Go, a couple of hours on the bike each session. So I don't know that I would have necessarily gone through the hurt locker with it, but it was just a building up of a base fitness that enabled me to kind of get to the start of that season with a fitness level that was well and truly above everybody else. And that enabled me to then, I felt as though I could drive every single session more so and stay ahead. And I just kept wanting to stay ahead and ahead. And I could work on my technique better because I had that fitness level to do it when it did come to the time of being back with coaching and on the water.
So when did New Zealand women's rowing change? Because I guess were the men just able to make up their own program in that sense, or was it just in the women's program had more flexibility?
Do you know what? This was just a sort of a different period of time when things were on the cusp of becoming slightly more professional. I think up until that point, we were rowing out of a tiny little corrugated shed for Row New Zealand, and then 2009 we moved into this brand new facility, and then the whole kind of New Zealand team just seemed to flourish, and we quite quickly got to max capacity of that building, and so everything became a bit more professional in that sense. So yeah, I think I was around for a long time, so that was sort of way back and before the things really kind of you were supported throughout your season, whether you were in the team or not, I think.
So were you just like killing everybody on stroke side when you had seat racing that year?
Yeah, I think it was pretty. Yeah, I don't remember there being a huge issue with competition. However, there definitely was, but not. I think actually more so when it was U2 type things. But as soon as it got up to the 2K higher rating things, then yeah, that was fine. But yeah, no, I mean it was a good way to come into, I think, just mentally as much as physically into that season and the way that I wanted to approach that whole cycle. And yeah, again, yeah, good confidence. And then to go on to win a medal at the World Champs that year, again, it just reinforced that what I was doing was working and that I just needed to keep pushing and keep going for it. And so you get quite addicted to that too. It's a fun thing to, when the hard work pays off.
You talked about the eights final in 2017 at the start of our chat, but that pairs race in 2009 was something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, gosh, I'm just trying to think what happened in that one.
You got third, but the pairs were so close to each other throughout that race. You couldn't really put. I think the Americans won it in the end, didn't they?
Yeah, and it was, all of those races were so good for experience for me in terms of, just being amongst all that competition at that level, and I hadn't been there much before. So, yeah, it was just a good learning curve to go through all of that and feel it so that you can, come back to each session the following year and you've got that thought in your mind as well.
Yeah. So how did this pair with Juliet Haig, which was the pair you took through to the London Olympics, how did that get put together?
So when Juliet came back at the start of, she did 2009 in the UK, came back, joined the summer squad, heading into 2010. And I think she started off the first part in the single because she wanted to do a switch and try perhaps the double or the quad, and then ended up deciding that the pair was her strength. So she was put back into the sweep squad with me, and there were, at that point, there were four of us, 2-stroke, 2-bar, that were the definite, stand out. And so we had a whole summer of just every single session. I remember cycling to training feeling nervous, really, really nervous every day because I just knew how tough it was going to be. And we were up against, Juliet and I would often be against another combination who were particularly good at U2 training. And back then we didn't really I didn't focus on heart rates and things, or, sort of a session was a session for achieving this and not going through the roof on your heart rate. We went for every U2 and my heart rate was through the roof, but it was 20, 20 to whatever K of just every single stroke, throwing everything at it. And the other girls, being quite strong, could do really well at that U2 level. But when it came to the competition, the racing things, then Juliet and I would just naturally sort of take off. So it was quite, by the end of the summer, it was clear cut. We'd had a number of races that proved that we were the dominant combination. And so when we went to trials that year, it was day one of trials. The selectors sent us out and said, basically, if we do a good prognostic, then we're the pair, which we did. We went out there and nailed it, which was sort of how Juliet and I we were very good at working together and performing each and every time that we went out. And so did that, secured the spot, and it was a nice way to go through trials, having done your 2K, next day do your race, and then you could go out training every day. It was bliss compared to many other ones that I've been through.
There's a couple of things. You mentioned 2K erg. I was going to ask you what your PB was on or is on the 2K.
So my PB is 6:45.
Wow.
And I did that year, 2010, when after that summer of just thrashing it out. So I'm pretty sure that's why I did it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So who was coaching you that year that wasn't that bothered about what your pulse rates were?
John Robinson.
And I guess that was something that didn't sort of. When did the New Zealand team start saying, right, you need to stick at these heart rate zones, Rebecca?
Yeah, that was I think that was closer to, it might have, yeah, sort of maybe sort of 2011 time, I would say. It sort of got a bit more changing the approach in terms of periodizing, oh gosh, I can't say that, training different
Yeah.
sections.
Periodization.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, so, but at that point, and when we were sort of coming through the age groups, we really didn't at all. But I'm pleased that I didn't have that focus, because again, it sort of made me realize how hard I can push myself in many ways. So I got pretty battle hardy early on, and coming through that sort of time where you just didn't really focus on that. It was just focusing on winning. And yeah.
So did you go out and do any sessions with Dick Tonks?
Yes, I had him as my coach in 2006, and I think for a couple of summers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had quite a lot of time training under him.
And what was your experience like training under Dick Tonks?
Yeah, it was tough. It was a different ball game, because you would turn up to training and you didn't know, you were never told what that session was going to be, how far you'd be rowing, you know, what if you were doing high rating or anything like that. So yeah, you got quite good at just coping with anything. Like nothing was an issue, but we had but we were also very fresh and new and didn't know a lot.
Yeah.
In that 8 sort of squad, but we went over to Poland, and we had the World Cup in 2006. We arrived, and we were beaten by the Belarus 2 crew in the B final. So basically, we came last, and a very pitiful last. And we got the Sunday off, or the Monday off after that regatta, and then went to training the next day. And that was the last day off we basically had for a year. And then on the day when everybody else, when the Piers and the Sandwells and Mahe all had a day off, we would put the 8 on a trailer and take it to a river somewhere. And it was the on and off sessions, and Dick would just say on through his megaphone, and we just have to go to high rating, and we wouldn't know for how long, and then he'd say off. So it was sort of, I think it was about between sort of 30 seconds to 2 minutes could be on, and it was varied. And then we do that up until a certain point, and then he'd turn us around and we'd do it all the way home. But it was pretty brutal. But it just kind of made us tough at the same time. And we did get to we did improve a lot. We were technically not very good. And I look back and I really didn't have a clue about rowing technically. But we did go into that World Champs at Dorney Lake, and we won the B final, but the selectors were all quite happy with that and the improvement they saw and the development within us and maturity, I think, that we kind of got towards the end of that campaign.
So how many coaches have you had through your career in New Zealand, Rebecca?
Gosh, I've had quite a few, probably similar number as peer partners. I've had Marion was my under-23 coach, and then I've had Dave Thompson, Dan Kelly, Gary Hay. Yeah, I've had a full mix, and John Robinson.
So do you have one that stands out in particular, or what is it that these coaches have given you, or who have you learnt most from?
So I remember a couple of standout things with Marion. I learnt about riding the boat and that boat feel kind of thing from Marion. I still remember the exact session when I got the feeling for it, and she could see it, and she was so excited by it. So that was quite a cool big part of my rowing career that I attribute to Marion. And then with Dick, there was that what we've just spoken about, just kind of this. When it got to so with John Robinson, I think one thing I got from him was that he didn't overcoach us. He sort of really stood back from that. But what Julian and I did was we really drove our own program in every sense, and we didn't wait for someone else at Royal New Zealand to tell us what to do, and we were always thinking about what we could do to make ourselves better in ourselves in that situation. So, and I think that was a slightly different mentality, and I think it sort of started to creep in when we got too professional and too sort of the younger generations coming through didn't appreciate that you actually have to you can't be the victim, you've got to drive it, and you can't turn up to Royal New Zealand and be part of the team and expect to come out the other side an Olympic champion. You have to kind of make that happen still. So, so I think John and let us kind of do that too. But then also with Dave Thompson, it was really quite a cool thing to be a part of with him and see his approach to making an 8 work. And I'd never been a part of that before, and it was such an exciting, cool thing to realise that you didn't need the 8 best people physically in the world, but if you were able to create this culture and bring this 8 together, and technically he was great too. He could see Nate going, but he would coach that more with the overall movement rather than individuals. But it was a total appreciation for the strength of the team, and that was on and off the water. So I never done all of that to the full extent that I had done that with Dave. So I loved that I got to learn and experience that with him, which I thought was quite valuable.
Yeah. So we left your career in 2010, where the course of championships were on Carapiro. So you were a bronze medalist from the year before. So you talked about gaining that confidence, but that 2010 season must have been quite special for you.
Yeah, no, it really was. It was so great, and I was rowing with Juliet, and so many things. We loved being in a pair together and working hard together, and we were on the same page about so many things. And to go overseas and to be winning and at the World Cups, and then to have a home World Champs as well, it was pretty special. I still remember that, and we had such a lot of support. There was a lot of spectators and things too, which just made it such a cool World Champs to be at. I remember getting to the 1,000 meter mark, and I could hear the crowd cheering, which was unlike any other rowing regatta they've been to have all that sort of noise and things. So it was sort of quite a spine-tingling sort of situation to be in as a rower, and to win a home World Champs and to be given that chance to was quite a special thing for sure.
Yeah, that was amazing. And of course, it wasn't just the fact that you won the World Champs, but New Zealand were on the top in men's and women's pairs at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was good. It was good to be part of a team that was just doing so well all together. It's fun to have to cheer each other on, and you get a lot of confidence too, knowing that other people in your team are succeeding, and you can sort of use that as a benchmark for what you're doing and good gauge. And so I think everyone was really supportive and very happy for one another, and it's nice to be part of a team with such excitement within it.
Do you think what you were doing had any influence on the men, and or did what the men were doing have any influence on you in terms of training or racing?
Well, we'd always, we always do the weekly Wednesday and sort of Saturday sessions against one another, and which is such a big strength of our team. And so we would want to be the top of that table, prognostic table, every week. So you would do anything that you could, and so to have the competition from the guys and whoever else, lightweight girls, or different things. It was great benchmark. It really kind of drove you on, and every week you were always going for it. It wasn't as if you waited till the end of the season to perform. You were going for that the entire way through. And what I really enjoyed about our rowing team too within the athletes is there's a huge amount of respect for one another, and the guys really valued our results and our efforts, and likewise too. So I thought that was such a nice part of what our team sort of was, and the culture and the athletes, and how we thought of one another.
Yeah, and of course 2010 was also the start of your rivalry with the British pair of Glover and Stanley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. They they obviously were sort of starting out and starting to show great form, and after that World Champs, our selectors did sort of say to us in the review, look out for the British pair, so they could see that too. Everyone, could sense that this was something special with that combination. So, they were showing their form at that World Champs.
Yeah, and the next World Championships was a very, very special race. I seem to recall that was just. What do you remember of that?
Oh my gosh, it was. It bled. So we we rated, I think the average rating was 39.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Was that higher than you'd done in 2010?
Yeah, it was. And I
had you
wouldn't.
trained at that at all?
Yeah, I mean, various things happened. I wouldn't say that it was a great thing, but it was also something that was quite cool to know that you could do. But I think we started rowing not with the right sort of length and things that we should have been, and all that sort of thing. We also had a bit of injury trouble with Juliet's back, and I think some of the way that we started rowing was a bit of protecting her back as well. So that was a bit of a management thing right through to the London game. So yeah, I mean that's what happens sometimes. Various things sort of change what you do, but I still, that race was quite a cool one to be up against Heather and Helen, and just going for it, and it was all very tight and yeah, close calls at the end. So
yeah, I can't remember if you were up in or they were up in that race and you came through at the finish, or
gosh, yeah, do you know what? I can't. I think maybe they were up, but they were always quite good at getting out of the box, definitely. So very fast starters, and naturally I'm not very fast the first 500, so can't say exactly, but I think they were up.
So double world champion in 2010, 2011. So you won your first Olympic medal in 2012. It was bronze in the pairs. What's your view on that performance, and what's your view on that bronze medal now?
Yeah, I think that that one, again, we'd gone through so much, and we had so many injury problems and various things. And I mean, Juliet in the final stage leading into the Olympics had tendonitis in her forearm. She got stung by a wasp in training and couldn't see out of her eyes for a few days. Like all these sort of things. And so, and we got to the heats race, and we didn't row particularly well. And I think the Australian girls beat us by 5 seconds. And then our coach sort of came in after the race and just said that basically you kind of stuffed and you've stuffed it, sort of thing. So left us to it. But then, so we just, which we were naturally kind of used to, we just sort of got back to working on trying to solve some sort of the problem in that short space of time, and just working on what we could control. And so we went out for that race, and it was just a really gutsy race. It wasn't pretty at all, but we threw everything we possibly could at it, and got the bronze, which we were really happy. It might have appeared, and probably was a bit of a lesser performance than what we were capable of, but we knew everything that we had gone through. So
it
was a super tough time, and so we were just only really happy to have been able to stand on the podium. And
I didn't realise that, actually. I have to say, a bit of favouritism here. I think this is my son, Rebecca, and he's asked this question for you. Thanks for that question, Frank. Hope you're enjoying listening to Rebecca. What race would you like to relive, given the chance? I know that's one of those all questions, isn't it?
I mean, gosh, it's really hard to choose. I honestly, I think they it will be between the Rio pair final and the 2017 World Champs 8 final. Yeah, both of those. Ooh. I think to relive the feeling, that exciting feeling of being in the 8, and then in the pair in Rio, because it was just such a we were just dropped and so out of it, and then to come back through, and I just love that we were able to do that. And so that one, I would like to relive that again, because I was quite personally satisfied that we were able to.
Because at the finish, you were maybe less than half a length behind the British in 2016 at the Rio Games. But I couldn't believe, I was watching the race again today, and I couldn't believe how far off the pace you were at 500 metres. You were like maybe half a third of a length of clear water behind the British.
I know, it was. We were
what happened?
Well, We had, so I was in the 8 as well, and we had lost a day and had congested racing because of conditions. And I think that sort of impacted the start a little bit. I'm not, and as I have said, I'm not a naturally fast starter. We had been working, Jen and I, on our start a lot through the final sort of stages, and it felt like we'd really gotten a lot better at it. And so to be that far behind out of the start of that race, I was surprised. I remember feeling the wake of the GB pair, which when you feel someone's boat wake coming through, you know, because you can't obviously turn around and see, but you know how far behind you really are. So, but I remember at that point thinking, oh, well, it is what it is. I've just got to make the most of it now. And we actually we looked at our GPS afterwards, and we went over 100% in the final. I think it was sort of about 250 to the line, which we hadn't really done throughout the race. So it was a funny kind of one. But we just kind of went for it towards the end, which was we started to build, go through boats coming back, and just that kind of spurred us on. And when you get that feeling as if you're starting to row through people, it's like quite a cool starting thing, and the pain doesn't really matter anymore. You just want that result. You throw whatever you possibly can in it.
Wow. We've got another good question coming up, but I want to go back to 2016. I think I will go back to 2016, but somebody's asked this question here, which is another quite interesting question, which I think any rower would have to think twice about. What about for you, Rebecca?
I think rowing has I probably know that I'm a really resilient person. Like, I do back myself to just sort of be quite calm about things and know that I will get through it, but it's my approach is the way that I'll do it, and not to kind of be rattled about whatever else is going around me. So just being quite sort of steady and relaxed and methodical, and knowing that I'm capable, I think is a big thing, and having that knowledge within yourself makes you feel as though you can then achieve whatever sort of comes your way. So I guess it's taught me that I'm capable if I set my mind to something.
And how long did it take rowing, or you rowing, to learn that lesson?
Yeah, I think well, it was accumulative over time, but once I started winning medals and doing that sort of over and over, and I think a few years into that in the Olympics in 2012, I think then I kind of knew that about myself, and I knew too that I could go out and I could perform each and every single time that I went out there, so I could be consistent because I put my mind to it in that way, and I knew I was strong mentally in every possible way, that nothing could kind of break me. Whilst I physically may not have been the best, I felt like I could achieve whatever I could because my mental strength and resilience and things. So
wow, okay. So just taking you back a little bit to 2016, so and that would be the pairs race, one of the race would row again. I mean, if you had your time again, would you choose not to double up in the women's 8? And maybe that would have seen you closer or in front of the British pair at the Rio Games.
I mean, definitely not. Life is life, and I have no regrets about it. I loved being in that 8 as well, and being given the opportunity to do 2 boats and have 2 goes at it. I think the only regret is that we probably underperformed a little bit in the 8. I thought we were capable of being on the podium, and but that's, I don't know. It was what it was, but we were a very inexperienced team. I was the only one that had gone to the Olympics at that point. So I think ultimately I would have loved to have seen both me and Jen medal in both and have the 8 on the podium. That would have been the dream. But I definitely don't regret it. I loved all of it, and I think the pair being in the 8 added to our result in the pair as well. So I can only thank my teammates for helping us sort of become a strong pair combination because we had Kerry and Grace within that too, and you know how strong they are. So to have that quality of daily competition within your own squad was incredible. So I wouldn't want to have been isolated and sent somewhere else in training, perhaps working with another boat and not being part of that squad. So yeah.
Yeah, well, Kerry and Grace, I kind of wanted to talk to you about that because that was one of the most special races in the world that happened outside of the gaze of the public. You and Gala and Prendergast going for the Olympic pairs slot, and you guys came out on top. I mean, what do you remember about that competition that year? And
so we got to so we were training in 2015. This is sort of how I remember it, but Grace and Kerry were the pair at that time, and I had been, obviously lost my spot, which I had for a number of years, but equally got to be in this grade 8, which was amazing. But Jen
you got
and
a silver medal that year, didn't you?
We did, yeah. First time to have a women's 8 medal at World Champs and qualify for the Olympics, so it was a great thing to be a part of. Jen and I were often put in a pair to train together, and in Slovenia in our final training block we were starting to show some really, really promising speed against Kerry and Grace, and so Jen and I got a sniff of that and took that into the next season, both sort of acknowledging to each other that if we give this a really good go then it's definitely possible. So which is what we did, and then we got back into that summer, and then it was lots of time in the pair, and the selectors acknowledged that the combinations work best with Kerry and Grace and Jen and I rather than switching in between. So we got to towards the end of the season we had one of our final.
So can I just stop you there? Can I just say, so did you get to row with Grace Prendergast and try it in a pair, and did Jen get to row with Kerry Gowler?
No, we would switch around.
Okay.
So it was all quite close in that way too, but definitely we each worked best within the two separate pairs. But yeah, but again, that's another great thing to be able to experience rowing with different partners of that level. It adds to your own performance in the end. So, but we got to one of the final regattas, and I think it was the Cambridge Town Cup, and it was very favourable conditions in terms of fast conditions. But Jen and I we bet Kerry and Grace by a few seconds, and unofficially broke the world record at that time.
Wow.
But so we knew we had like really, really great speed. It wasn't that anyone, I don't think, was underperforming either. I think that we were all just going so well. But I had also, and Jen and I just felt quite confident within each other too, and we were getting that real high of performing and winning, and through just those numbers, that all that time that we had started to get together. And then we got to the selection trials, and the selectors said, this is the trial will be against the two combinations. And so we raced again, and Jen and I won again, and we had another.
How much high?
Gosh, I think it would have been a boat length or half a boat length. I can't. Terrible rowing memory, but so it was a definite clear cut win. I think there was a little bit of a challenge around that, which is fair enough. But also at that time I felt quite strong in terms of knowing what I was capable of, and I think that was another element that added to why we won, because we had that confidence. Which Kerry and Grace, coming through at that point, they were younger and less experienced, and probably didn't, and they probably do now. I mean, you can see they do now, which is fantastic. But at that point, that was the result of these trials, and we came out. We had won it fair and square, and they gave us a really great go at doing it, which set us up, for that whole next cycle. And I think what was really great too about competing against people like Kerry and Grace is that it's always on the water things, and we're all so good and respectful, and we can get into that 8 and work together as a team so well, and really enjoy each other. And yeah, which is it's it's also tough and so competitive, but to be able to do that is a real testament, I think, to your teammates.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask one more thing about that 2016. How come you're in the two seat of the eight and not further down towards the stern? A bit like Hamish Bond in the two seat of the
Yeah,
Kiwi eight
yeah.
in Tokyo.
I mean, honestly, it wasn't my decision. I would rather have been at the front of the boat, and I think that, um, in my personal opinion, I think it would have potentially helped going into that Olympic final, because when you're having to make some decisions throughout a race, I probably could have done that, but I couldn't do
Yeah.
much from the two seat. But I think there was a lot of pressure through the selectors and the coaches, thinking that it was a big ask for having me in the stroke set of two boats. So I think they were trying to relieve some pressure in that sense. And however, I know full well I could have done it, yeah, I mean, this is, everyone's got their own viewpoint and about it all, but that's sort of how I kind of took it. But I was happy to go with that and work with the team. But yeah, ultimately I think it, yeah, well, I don't know, tricky kind of scenarios, and as an athlete, you kind of can't always, in that scenario, you can't always be making those decisions. You have to rely on other people who see the whole picture to make it. So yeah.
So this is a bit of an unfair question I'm going to ask you now, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You've raced Glover and Stanning, and you've raced Gala and Prendergrass. Who, who's the best pair?
Oh my gosh, that is really hard. Yeah. Do you know what? I mean, they're both really tough. Honestly, I put them on a par. I really do. And it's just on the day, I guess. I think I probably would want to, if I was racing both of them, just getting out of front would be my tactics, I would say, to
Yeah.
race it from the start, because they can get off and get going, and then they can control the races. But they're both, really tough pairs, and they all rode so well. So yeah, I can't choose. Sorry.
Yeah. I know it's a bit of an unfair question, that. What did you make of Helen Glover coming back for the Tokyo Olympics in just those last few months? Was that something you had a view on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. Like, great that she could do it and give it a go and get back into the racing form and things. And yeah, I mean, I think there's no reason why she shouldn't have, if she was there and up for the standard. And yeah, great to pair with Polly and give it a shot that potentially may not have been possible for Polly and another partner too. So yeah, I think it was great to see. I'm very pleased that she got to do that after having 3 kids as well. It's quite inspiring, I think, and
Yeah.
great to kind of for a woman to dip in and out of your sport and having children and all of that kind of thing. It's quite cool that someone has gone again and done that and shown that it's all possible. So yeah.
So talk to me about New Zealand and the Tokyo Olympics. I mean, what did you make of it watching it? What do you make now of New Zealand women's rowing?
Yeah, I mean, I think they are just on fire, right? Like, it's the great team that had gone through to Tokyo, that they knew what they were doing. I think Kerry and Grace set a really incredible standard for not just the women, but the whole entire team, to feed off through quite a difficult period with all the COVID disruptions and things like that. But yeah, I think the team, it was really cool for me to be there at the start and help set up this culture within the girls, and this sort of experience and knowledge base and things that can then be passed on from year to year to squad. And yeah, so I think they are doing a great job in terms of just keeping the development there and performing and being really consistent and enjoying it as well. I think they always look like that, and as someone that's been part of it, we always had a really great time. So I love the fact that you can work hard and enjoy it, and Ryan's pretty brutal sport and tough and demanding. So you want to be able to know that you can have a great time with your teammates and people around you and things too.
Do you know how many of the women are carrying on for next season yet?
No, No, I'm not sure. It's been fantastic to have the Grace and Ruby and Emma Knight are all over here in the UK now. Grace and Ruby are at Cambridge studying in rowing, and Emma's just up the road in Wimbledon. So seeing a few of the Kiwi girls now, which is nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think obviously everyone's sort of keeping their hand in a little bit, but I couldn't. Yeah, I've got no insight. I'm sorry at this stage to know really what's happening for the next cycle.
So we've got another question from one of our listeners, Brandon. There's a couple of questions he's asked. A bit of a long question. I guess we've talked about some of this already. So you've experienced different sorts of iterations of the New Zealand high performance system. So we've talked a little bit about what aspects were most beneficial. Did anything get lost in transition to a fully funded? And then I guess his last question is, could any changes in the system mean that you would have extended your rowing career? So
okay, I think there was a turning point where the younger athletes coming through, I think I addressed this a little bit before, but thought if you turn up you would get the result. And I think though that did become sort of more acknowledged, and there was work sort of done to counteract that going forward.
yeah,
I mean, whether all athletes take that on board or not, however, it was something that sort of crept in very quickly without kind of realizing it, but then turned around at the same token. But I mean, I'm pleased that I got to go through all that period and the way that my timeline of my rowing career kind of was. That I was able to just fully drive it by myself, and whether that's unlucky because now I feel quite personally satisfied by that, maybe one thing, but that's sort of how it was. But yeah, I think overall, I think they're pretty. The pros of the current funded professional setup now far outweigh anything from the early days for me. It's pretty raw kind of basic program, but I think the whole world's sort of moving on in that respect, so you need to keep up with it. And the knowledge and things that I gained towards the end of my career in many different ways because of the extra resources we had was quite exceptional, and it was great that I could keep learning as things went on. And the second question was,
could any,
no, I left on my own terms when I wanted to. I think I had a really lengthy career. I achieved everything that I wanted to, and I was pleased with mine. I think not every athlete gets to leave satisfied on their own terms, so I was thankful for that. And what I really love about my rowing career now is the fact that I'm now able to do many cool things in terms of career and life and travel and the opportunities that I get because of my rowing career. So I like now that I get the chance to enjoy all of that, and which again I like to remind athletes too, coming sort of out of the system, but it's actually the transition can be such a cool thing because your sport can still be giving you so many rewarding things that whilst you're no longer competing, you actually now get the chance to really take up some of those things. So I'm very happy to be at this point with my career.
That's pretty cool. What do you make of the sport now, Rebecca? There's sort of changes mooted for 2028, coastal rowing potential, and the course for 2028 just being 1,500 meters.
Yeah.
Lightweights maybe not so much in the future. When you look at your sport now from the outside, relatively.
I mean, I think everything has to move on and transition. You can't sort of stay the same the entire time, and that is life in the world. As a traditionalist, the 1,500, and as a 2,000 meter rower, I think the 1,500. I'm glad it wasn't going to be in my career, but that is what it is, and there's time to prepare and train for that too. So the lightweight category, I think I quite pro with it not being in, just because as an athlete that wasn't as big as some of the other athletes, it proved to me that you didn't have to be competing on equal size.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and yeah, I mean, I think the sport is definitely changing and evolving, and things are kind of upping standards, they're front and center. But yeah, I mean, I look at it still very positively. I think it's still got a great essence to it. And the coastal rowing, I think, will be a cool sort of addition that hopefully will help people who aren't involved in rowing become interested and follow it some more. So that can only help the sport. So if you need to kind of step out of the traditional mold in order to generate more of that to keep our sport hopefully in the Olympics long term, then yeah, I have no issue with that.
And who do you think will be up for the Halberg Awards in New Zealand this year? Have they happened yet? They haven't happened yet, have they?
No, I don't think they've happened. No. I mean, I would hope the Kiwi girls pair and then the men's 8 are in amongst that.
Is there a separate award for men's and women's teams? Or just team of the
There
year?
are, yeah. So they do. Oh, sorry, no, they do team of the year.
So who would you give it to, the men's 8 or the women's pair? Bearing in mind they doubled up and got a silver.
Yeah, I mean, that is again, that's a hard one because the men, I particularly loved that performance. I thought that was just such a special one, and they really rallied the whole sport, the whole meaning of team out in the truest sense to achieve that. And but then again with the women's 8 to and the girls pair to have 2 medals, I think is pretty exceptional as well. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I do not want to be a judge in that scenario. And I think the Olympic team did so well overall, so I think there'll be other performances to throw the mix into that too. So yeah, it'll be a toughie.
Yeah. And I suppose the future is rosy for New Zealand rowing both men's and women's at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think when you've got results at that level coming through, it spurs on, the school level kids to grow, and then they think they can see this pathway, and so they'll go for it. And that's sort of what happened with the Everson Dale twins and things coming through, and when Rob Woodall won, in Sydney, and when you start developing that base and you get more people out there doing the sport, then it does feed the program at the highest level. So yeah, only great things. Success does breed success, and I think it's a very rosy outlook.
I wanted to ask you actually one thing that I forgot to ask you was about the Ever Swindells, because I know a lot of women have said they've been inspired by the Ever Swindells. Were you one of those?
Yeah, I mean they were part of our squad, and I was there seeing them train hard, relentlessly every single day. Yeah, so absolutely they are part of the mix for me. There was, at that time it was Mahe and the Everson Dale twins that we got to see and be a part of a squad when there hadn't been a huge number of results living into that, to have world champions and things that you could kind of watch and see what they did and try and recreate. That was incredible to have those people right there on your doorstep as role models. So yeah, absolutely, they were part of it for me. And again, my cousin Sonia too, and Rob were to have them around locally and know that they had sort of achieved this. It was it's just nice to have that local kind of thing. You feel like it's because it's there, you can also achieve the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think just finally, I'm not sure whether this is a fair question, bearing in mind you're a Kiwi, but you are in Britain. What did you make of the British performance at the Olympics? And
yeah, I mean the British team throughout my whole career has just been super strong, and they've performed each time. I guess it's an underperformance, but it did seem you lost a whole lot of experience, and after Rio, and experience does count for a lot. So you take that out of the team, and then I again, maybe there's a bit more of that whole with the younger ones, and I don't know as such, but this is just a projection, but potentially they had that sort of, they were part of a team that had always had success, and perhaps they just thought arriving there was going to make them successful instead of really going for it, which many of the previous athletes I know had done. So yeah, I mean that's just my So Kiwi speculation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why not finish with the race in your career that you're most proud of, Rebecca?
Yeah. The women's 8, I think, and is a proud one to be part of something that got to be creating history for New Zealand with the 2015 World Champs. But then the 2016 will be the pair race will be probably my proudest one, in the fact that we achieved a result but had a pretty slow start and were able to kind of pull it back. So yeah, I'm quite proud of that one.
Yeah, and if you get a chance, if you're watching this, go back and watch that 2016 women's pairs final, because that is one hell of a race to watch. It's a great race. Rebecca, we've been talking for over an hour. I have to say thank you very much for giving all your time and for putting up with some of those difficult questions. I know.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's I've had to kind of remember all my roles, so it's good to kind of get back to touching all these subjects. So it's thank you. I've enjoyed it.
So we'll end the live part of the broadcast now. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.